Hello, good morning, everyone. How are you today? Pop into the chat. Let me know that you are here. And it's somewhat early for me, so I have my coffee. So I hope you have yours too, because I have a tendency to talk a lot about this topic. So today's topic is about imposter syndrome. So a lot of times students maybe have never heard of this before, or they've heard of it but didn't know what it meant. But the gist of it is when we start talking about what it makes you feel and think, people often say, oh my gosh, I have that. So when we look at imposter syndrome, here's how we kind of guide ourselves into realizing whether or not we might be suffering from it. So ask yourself a question. So have you ever said things to yourself like, I don't belong here, or everyone else in this class or at this job or whatever is smarter than I am? Or here's the big one, they're going to find out that I don't know what I am doing. And you feel like you're always kind of one step ahead of getting found out. So pop in the chat, let me know if you've ever said any of those things to yourself. Basically, you guys, that's imposter syndrome. And it's this feeling, this feeling and belief that you're not qualified to be in whatever situation you find yourself in. And it is a huge lie that we tell ourselves. A lot of nursing students tell themselves this. A lot of high achievers tell themselves this. I saw a quote the other day. I don't remember where it came from, but I just thought, holy cow, that is so true. And it said, the true imposter does not feel like an imposter. They don't have imposter syndrome. It's the people who really do belong, who really are good enough, smart enough, talented enough that have imposter syndrome. So it's very ironic in that way. So if this sounds like you, I'm talking to you this morning about imposter syndrome, you guys. Real quick, we've got someone who says, there is a podcast episode about this, you guys. So if you want to listen to it on the pod, it is there. And it got this person out of a big slump. I'm so, so glad. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So again, imposter syndrome, super common amongst nursing students, you guys. You probably, if you're going into your program or you're in your program, and up until right this minute, you thought you were the only one. You are not the only one. When I talk about this, it resonates very strongly with students because maybe they had this feeling but didn't have a name for it, and did not realize that this was completely a shared experience amongst many, many students. So there's lots of reasons why you might have imposter syndrome in nursing school. A couple of them are two types of students in general for nursing school imposter syndrome candidates, right? So you are that student, maybe you fought tooth and nail, you clawed your way through your prereqs, and you feel like you just barely got in. Okay, you didn't just barely get in. The bar is really high. If you got in, you are super talented and bright. But maybe prereqs were hard. Maybe you worked, had a family, have a learning disability, struggle with the mental illness, whatever. There's a million reasons why that phase of your life was really challenging. And so you get into nursing school and you assume everybody else just sailed right through all of that, and you're so wrong, okay? Or you were that super rock star turbo student in your prereqs, and now you get to nursing school and you're surrounded by a bunch of other rock star students, and you feel all of a sudden like you're just this average student. And that can give you feelings of imposter syndrome as well. Okay, so I just real quick have to pop up some of these comments because they're so good. Starting a job, this is a huge time for imposter syndrome, you guys. Having it in nursing school is one thing, and then when you actually get to work, holy cow. So it'll be great if you could learn to deal with it early on, okay? Because yeah, it is magnified when you're actually at the bedside for sure. If you get nothing else out of this today, you guys, I want you to know Imposter syndrome, it feels so real, and I get it. I have it. I was just thinking this morning about, I don't even remember what it was, but I was like, that'd be a really cool thing for me to do in my business. And then I think, oh, but who's going to think that I know anything about that? And I was like, hello, imposter syndrome. It comes at me all the time. So if it comes at you, it's okay. Just know, I want you to recognize when it happens and tell yourself that it has zero basis in reality. Okay. It's this perception that you have, and that's all it is. No basis in reality. So, one of my favorite quotes about imposter syndrome is from a woman who suffers from imposter syndrome. And she says, I have written 11 books, and every time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. And do you guys know who said that? That is Maya Angelou, the famous poet and author. So if Maya Angelou can have imposter syndrome, I can have it, you can have it. It's all in how we deal with it and recognize it for what it is when it does pop up its lying, ugly little head, okay? So why you really want to deal with it, you can't just poo-poo it and just keep going thinking that you're an imposter and struggling through it, because it will hold you back. It will definitely make you doubt yourself. It will damage your self-esteem. It will limit the chances that you're willing to take. And I'm not just talking about nursing school. When you're out there working, if a great job opportunity comes up, you won't go for it because you have imposter syndrome. So when I was in the ICU, I had it in my head. Like, I had it in my head, like ingrained, that it was going to take me 5 years to get out of that, not the novice, the novice to expert continuum. And if you haven't learned that yet, you will in nursing school. But I thought it's going to take me 5 years to feel like I know what I'm doing. It probably took me 4. I mean, I felt horrible and stressed out, horrible, anxiety every time I walked into work for a good 2 years for sure. But I just had it in my head that I was a super beginner ICU nurse for 5 years. That was just in my head. And so a job came up on the rapid response team. And it did not even occur to me to apply for that position because I thought, well, I'm still learning how to be an ICU nurse. I can't go and now learn how to be the rapid response nurse. And then a nurse who started after me as a new grad, like a year or so after me, applied and got that job. And I was so proud of her. She just went for it. And I was like, how did you do that? And she did it, and she's amazing. So it will hold you back throughout your whole career. So you have to address it. It will limit those chances that you're willing to take. And it will keep you playing small in that way. You might have really big dreams about your nursing career, getting your DNP or becoming that rock star flight nurse. Okay. To me, that's just like the coolest thing ever. I could never do it because I hate flying, but how cool a job would that be? Or starting your own home health agency, or becoming a PhD and running a nursing division, like whatever your huge dreams are. If you have imposter syndrome, you will talk yourself out of those things before you even try them. So let's talk about what this might look like in nursing school, okay? And I just want you to see how it kind of robs you of your joy. I really believe that school should be joyful and learning should be joyful. So let's say you're in sim lab and you've got imposter syndrome and your friend doesn't, okay? You both do a good job in the simulation, right? The one who does not have imposter syndrome, the instructor gives them some feedback. You did great in that simulation. Well, that student's going to say, thank you, I worked really hard learning about cardiogenic shock. And they high five and go on with their day feeling confident, right? And like they're getting this, they're in their groove. But you've got imposter syndrome. So Your instructor says, you did a good job in that simulation. You've got imposter syndrome. You don't just say, thank you, I worked really hard. No. You say, oh, I got so lucky that the scenario that came up just happened to be what I studied last night. Or, shoot, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Or you say, I was just guessing. I didn't know what I was doing in there. Which of those students feels empowered and fired up, and which one feels doubtful and uncertain? So you see how imposter syndrome it takes so much away from you. And I don't want you to have any of that taken from you, okay? I want you to be that empowered student. So now that we know a lot of nursing students have it, and nurses have imposter syndrome, and there's no shame in having it, we can all agree that it's in how we deal with it, right? So what do nurses do, you guys? What do I always say that nurses do? At the core of your job, it's you see problems, like you seek out problems, and then you fix them. You seek out solutions and you fix them. That is your job 100%. That's it in a nutshell. If you were at all fuzzy about the nurse's role, that's it, you guys. You seek out problems that your patient is having or could have, and you find ways to fix them. That's it, okay? It sounds so simple, doesn't it? At its core, yes, but it involves a lot of ingenuity, creativity, problem solving, critical thinking, clinical judgment, all of that, and that's what nursing school teaches you to do. So when you are at the bedside, when you're taking an exam, when you're doing a case study, you're in sim lab, you're doing a skill, your answer, or the question rather, that you are asking all the time is, what am I going to do about it? So when you recognize a problem in yourself, like, okay, I have imposter syndrome, what am I going to do about it? So let's make a few agreements, okay, you guys, and I have to revisit these all the time because, again, just this morning, I had that imposter syndrome lie pop up in my head. So you may have to revisit these agreements when you notice this popping up, okay? But make some agreements with yourself that you will accept as fact and true that you did not get into your program on a fluke, okay? So I want you to own your accomplishments. That's agreement number one. So pop in the chat and tell me if you can agree to, I'm going to own my accomplishments, and type out those words because there's power in saying that. You did not get in on a fluke, okay? That does not happen at all. You did not get into your program because, oh, it just happened to be less competitive this time around. Okay, that does not happen. You did not get in because you are lucky. You did not get in because you knew somebody that knew somebody or because of an error that was made. None of that, okay? Thank you, Yvette. Beautiful. You got into the program because you worked super hard. You took some really hard classes and you learned a lot of really hard things. You have earned that position. Okay, so own that. Accept that. Yvette did, and I'm super proud of her. Okay. The second agreement I want you to make, you guys, is stop comparing yourself to other students, which I know is kind of a hard one, but I want you to try very, very hard. So the next thing I want you to agree to is I'm not going to compare myself to other students. Just because someone else is smarter or you perceive them to be smarter or scores higher on an exam, like why are you even talking about that anyway? It's nobody's business. But it does not mean that you are less of a student, less of a person, less of a rock star because of it, okay? So put the brakes on that. There are going to be people in nursing school, at your job, whatever, who are way smarter than you will ever be. I know that all the time. I'm reminded of that every day when I go to work. I'm fine with that. Big deal, right? Smart people that are smarter than me, that know more than me, are amazing people to have around you because their knowledge rubs off on you. Okay, so if you are the not smartest person in the room and you're surrounded by people that are more accomplished and brighter and ahead of you, fantastic. You know what? You're going to learn from them. You don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room, right? You want to be learning, always growing. So Fabulous. Great. Let's move on from that one. So, having that mindset, having to be the one that always knows the most knowledge is huge. Okay. So, accept that one. And then the third one is, and this is a little bit difficult for some students to get a handle on, but stop apologizing or feeling bad for not knowing all the answers. Okay, that's a big one because I will hear from so many students who say, maybe they didn't know, or new nurses too, especially, they didn't know what to do in a situation and they feel horrible and they feel like huge failures. Or they miss an exam question and they feel like, I should have known that. Or they're in a sim and they say, I should have known that. You are not expected to have all the answers because you're learning. That is a crazy unrealistic expectation to set for yourself. Okay, can we do away with it right now, please? So if you had all the answers, you would not be the student. Okay, you would not even be the nurse, because as nurses, we are always students, always, always, forever learning something new. So when you're in clinical, when you're in class, when you're in sim lab or skills lab or wherever, and you have questions that you don't know the answers to, or someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, it's okay to say, I don't know. Not in an apologetic way, not in a, wow, I feel really bad about myself way, but in a, I don't know, but I do know where to go and find that information. Okay, that's what you do. That is the empowered statement right there. So you're at the bedside, a family member, a patient asks you a question. You guys, how many times have I seen nurses who don't want to look like they don't know say something just completely not right because they want to have some answer when they don't know the actual answer, and now they're just giving the information that is completely not the correct information. So let's say you're at the bedside and nurse walks in or cardiovascular surgeon walks in and starts asking you what the patient's morning labs are. It's an unreasonable expectation for you to think, oh my gosh, I should have had all of those memorized so that I could spout them off just in case somebody came by and asked me. No, you can say, I don't know those off the top of my head. I do know that everything was within normal limits, but we can go pull it up on the computer and look at them. There you go. That's a reasonable thing to do, you guys. Okay, so it's okay to not know. Be okay with that. You're a student, you are learning. Okay, fourth, accepting feedback with grace. I talked all about this in another video, so I'm not going to go into a huge talk about it right now, but when you have imposter syndrome, you don't accept feedback in the right way. You accept it in a completely skewed way that supports your imposter syndrome. So if it's positive feedback, again, remember the example of the student who did great in SimLab? The student with imposter syndrome can't accept positive feedback because it doesn't align with this weird lie they have about themselves. So you say things like, I got lucky, I was guessing, they grade easily, etc. That's not empowered and that's not joyful. So stop saying feedback or stop receiving feedback in that manner. Okay. When someone gives you complimentary feedback, you can simply say thank you. I worked really hard to learn how to care for a patient having acute coronary syndrome. It means a lot coming from you. Is there anything else I could do to improve my knowledge or performance in this area? Hello. If you can accept complimentary feedback and then seek potentially critical feedback, that's some next level confidence and clinical skills boosting action right there. Okay. The other kind of feedback that imposter syndrome sufferers really struggle with is that critical feedback. It's very difficult to receive critical feedback because you take it so personally. So if someone gives you that critical feedback, instead of letting it confirm your imposter syndrome, you have to take your feelings out of it and understand that this person isn't criticizing you. They are just giving you feedback on a thing that you did, right? Whether it was an exam, an assignment, a paper that you wrote, a presentation that you gave, a skill that you did in lab, whatever it is. Critical does not mean criticizing, okay? It's just, how am I going to help this student grow? That's all it is, you guys. So you have to take your feelings out of it, take the criticizing element out of it, and look at it as the humongous gift that it is, because somebody who's great at what they do just gave you their best tips for how you could be great also. And that is huge, okay? So that is the general gist of imposter syndrome, you guys, and how it can hold you back so much. I do have a podcast episode on this. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but if you go to the website and you just search for in the little search bar, imposter syndrome, it'll come up. I will also look for it and put it in the episode or the video description so that you have a quick way to click on that. Okay, you guys? So that is it for right now. I will be coming back on later today, probably around noon Pacific time. I want to take those of you who have questions about boot camp on a tour of boot camp. So I will be doing that around noon Pacific on the Straight A Nursing page and in the Thriving Nursing Students Facebook group, if you're in my Facebook group. So those two places. Okay, so around noon, I will be doing that. So I will see you guys later today, possibly. And then tomorrow is our last mindset edit. Oh my gosh. I will be dispelling 5 myths about nursing school. So I will see you tomorrow at noon Pacific for that, okay? And you are very welcome, and I'm glad you were here. And I don't know your name because you have to give this software like permission to see who you are. But when I exit out and go back into Facebook, I'll see who you are. Okay, thanks everybody. See you later. Bye.